All right. Hi, my name is Marla Carlson. I'm the coordinator with the Prairie Food System Vision Network. Thank you all for making time to be here with us today for From Fragile Food Systems to Resilient Food Webs. The Prairie Food System Vision Network will be running a series of webinars in the new year, and we're kind of putting them into two streams. One is systems thinking, and that's really what this webinar is kind of fitting into that stream today. So meaning just different ways of viewing, I guess, challenges and opportunities through the lens of systems rather than all the individual parts. So seeing how everything connects and just bringing in new thoughts to help us all think about how we can do our work and work together collaboratively. And then the other stream is highlighting projects and organizations that are doing the food systems work and wanting to be able to present that to our network. And again, with a similar intention or outcome that hopefully provide inspiration and both in the work that you do, but also in the potential for collaboration. So that's all I am going to say around the Prairie Food System Vision Network today, because I don't want to take up too much time so that we can get right into the presentation. And this is what I'm hoping my slides go. So I would ask you to join me in welcoming Rachel Schneider and Steffen Schneider. They're the co-founders of the Institute of Mindful Agriculture, and they have been biodynamic farmers for a very long time in the Hudson Valley in New York, and have co-founded this institute based on their lifetime of experience, both farming and working in food systems in their local area. So that's all I'm going to say, because I know that your introductions will be a part of your presentation, I'm thinking. So I'm going to pass it over to you so that we can get right into the content. So thank you, Rachel and Stefan, for being here with us today.
Pleasure. It's a pleasure. Um, shall we just begin with, before we get into introductions, let's just bring up our slides, okay?
For sure.
Okay.
It's all good.
Why? Here we go.
You got it.
Yeah, I got it.
So while you do that, Rachel, maybe I'll start and introduce myself briefly here. So hello, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting us, Marla, and allowing us to present a little bit out of our work and experience, and hopefully it'll be a a good start for some conversation. I mean, I'm deeply inspired when I look at the work that you're all doing out in with the network, and so hopefully it can be a learning opportunity for us. I know it's going to be a learning opportunity for us. So thank you for that. I have been farming for many years here in the Hudson Valley, and about let's see, 2011, we founded this institute, and it's really founded out of a deep concern for the future of agriculture and food, which I think many of us will share here, and wondering why that concern is literally seemingly in a blind spot in our societies. So that the work that we're doing is trying to figure out why that is and finding ways to allow agriculture to really become the contributor to a healthy society going forward, which right now it can't really do the way we've set it up. So I guess that's all I'm going to say. And like Marla said, I've been farming here at Hawthorne Valley Farm. It's a very diverse biodynamic farm here in the Hudson Valley. I started out as a dairy farmer, and then over the course of my work, I've sort of, branched out and embraced the various aspects of the farm here, including grain growing, vegetable growing, growing forage for the animals, and then also this place where we are still living is very interesting that the farm is embedded or at the foundation of basically a food value chain. There's a creamery here, a bakery, a large natural food store, and a bunch of large educational initiatives, a school, a private school, and a place-based learning center. On that, it's a perfect segue to let Rachel introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Schneider. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for welcoming us. So I worked alongside Steffen here at Hawthorne Valley. We've been here for over 35 years, and I began as a market gardener here and helped to found our CSA groups. And then I moved on to becoming a farm-based educator. My training is in education, Waldorf education, and after being a farmer, I became very interested in how to bring connection to the natural world to children. We already had a place-based learning center here, but I expanded on it, brought children from our nearby city, Hudson, which you will hear about more because we have a project there. You'll hear about it later in our presentation. And then from there, after many years at Hawthorne Valley, when we retired, I started an initiative called the Rolling Grocer, and we will speak about that as well. So thanks again for having us, Steffen.
Yeah, you can move the slides over, please.
Yep.
And so just to sort of reiterate, right, the way we look at the work we're doing is we're really trying to be part of and be a small learning community of practice and action, and really allowing agriculture and food enterprises to become levers of societal transformation. And one of my main mentors and people that really inspired me is Otto Scharmer, who is a co-founder of the Processing Institute. And in his latest book, he kind of says this, and I think it kind of really expresses what I think we are basing our work on. And what it says there is that all economic and societal development begins and ends with agriculture and the resulting access to food. Rethinking and reimagining our agri-food systems is a key to addressing the intertwined challenges to water supply, climate, biodiversity, food security, health, and well-being. And so that's kind of, I know that is the work of the network. And like I said, I think we might be learning more from you than you from us, but that is also inspiring us. So now let's talk a little bit about how the Institute came about. And so when I first encountered the work of the Processing Institute, I was a point in my career where I was kind of like, I don't know, probably just a little caught up in the routine and in the day-to-day. And then I was able to participate in a Processing Institute program, and it kind of really jerked me awake, if I would say it that way, and inspired the work forward. And the Institute is a result of that meeting and an inspiration. And what sort of jerked me awake is this realization of these three areas in our world where we've basically disconnected ourselves from the earth, expressed here as the ecological divide. And there's this organization called the Overshoot Day. And right now we are basically using up our planet by, I think, beginning of August, we're done. And so we're using almost twice as much of what the planet can regenerating. So we have lost connection to the natural world and basically the natural support system that we all rely on. Then the second one is we've kind of disconnected ourselves from our fellow human beings in our communities and societies, and certainly worldwide, because there's this tremendous wealth inequity, economic injustice. And these numbers are numbers, and they're really hard, in my mind at least, to sort of wrap myself around them, that, you know, a very few humans own the vast totality of wealth. Kind of hard to believe that that's the world we're living in, but that's the case currently. And then the last one is maybe the one at the time really shocked me the most, because I was just not aware of that fact, that an estimated 1 billion of humans suffer, you know, from burnout, stress, anxiety, depression. And for many of those individuals, it leads to suicide. The number of suicides each year in the world and in this country and among the farming community are just just tragic, unimaginable tragedy. And it's the spiritual divide, as we call it, is sort of really a symptom for a lack of purpose and a struggle of how to really be a human being in this world today. And thinking about these facts, it occurred to me, and I don't think I'm the only one, is that agriculture really sits squarely at the nexus of these three areas of nature, economy, society, and culture. And so, thinking about this a little further, we came up with this three soils framework. If we want to move the slide to the next one. Um, oh, I guess that's the first one I have to address here. So there's these three divides, and then one of the interesting factors, and this quote is another one that's really sort of very much made me think, and every time I relook at it, it kind of makes me realize where I need to do some work. So this gentleman, Gustav Spieth, said, "I used to think the top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change, but I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. And to deal with those, we need a spiritual and cultural transformation. And we scientists don't know how to do that." And so this really points me to myself, and this inner outer connection is sort of, besides the real concern about agriculture, the second basic premise of our work is, well, what does this inner outer connection really mean, and how can I cultivate it? And then, in thinking about that more, we came up with this framework that we sort of work with. We call it the three soils framework. We came up with a name because obviously dealing with agriculture, we very much know how important soil is. And in fact, I think tomorrow, December 5th, is World Soil Day. So this is a fantastic time to actually even talk and think about that. We know that it's difficult enough to sort of cultivate our soils in our landscapes, on our farms and gardens. But in our experience, at least what we are suggesting here today, and what we are suggesting in our work, is that focusing on those soils alone is not enough, and that there are two other areas that have qualities of soil-like qualities. We call them the social soil and the inner soil. So, in other words, the ecological soil is sort of a potential, or is a way to heal that ecological divide. We suggest, and we'll get into that in the further presentation, that cultivating or recognizing that there is such thing as a social soil and cultivating that can really help with the social divide. And then this inner soil is basically something that each one of us, I certainly think, has something in me that would maybe qualify for that definition, but that cultivation of that area is as important, and this goes back to that quote that I just shared by Spieth. So what we're going to do now is just basically maybe we'll go a little more into these three areas and describe some of the tools or ways of cultivating them and recognizing them. And then what we'll do, we'll have a break for questions, and then we'll continue. So we'll continue now with describing these some more.
Could I just add, Stefan, that as we go on, if comments or questions occur to you, please write them down, note them, and then we'll have two chances to share them. Yeah.
Right. So the reason I personally like the soil, calling these areas soils, is that in our natural soils we know that in order to really cultivate them, it's not just a one-off deal. It's a regular rhythmic activity of engagement with those soils that hopefully increases or maintains their fertility. And we think that the same is true for these other three soils. And you can see here that, some very basic ideas are in terms of the ecological soils. I don't really want to talk about them too much because I think we all know that. Social soil, I think, is an important area because we all know that in order to really address the issues we are facing, we have to learn how to work together collaboratively. And in that collaborative work, at least in our experience, I've learned that how we listen and talk to each other is sort of the it's the basic plow or chisel plow or compost that maybe gets that soil worked on, and we'll get into much more detail on that. And then the inner soil is it's really challenging, at least for me in my career and life. I feel like I've only recognized its essence and essential quality pretty late, but I'm happy that I did, because in our world, and many of us probably would agree that it's difficult to actually find space and time for inner reflection. In other words, to turn the camera back onto myself rather than just looking at the world and tending to externalize all the problems. And so let's keep going and now look at some of these tools. And so I'm just going to go over this very quickly. So this is soil health in our farms and gardens. And you can see I'm a little influence of biodynamics, but so I believe what's important is to create farm organisms. In other words, create farms that can sort of have a certain integrity and don't have to rely on excess inputs. I do believe that we have to integrate livestock and cropping within farms, or at least within landscapes. I'm quite It's quite interesting that these biodynamic preparations, which some of you might not know, but these are sort of homeopathic applications of ways of supporting energy and forces in farms and connecting the farms to its larger context, all the way up into the starry heavens. Use of cover crops, crop rotations, working with livestock to graze them appropriately. Try to minimize our tillage and stay away from synthetic inputs and GMOs and gene editing, but work with natural biodiversity. So those, I think, I don't want to spend too much time. If there's questions later, we can certainly go into them a little more. The next one would be, let's look at so now this is when we look at our farms and gardens. So what happens in a social soil? Is there anything that, what can we do there to cultivate that areas in our lives and work together? So let's move on to the next one. This is sort of just indicating collaboration across all of us.
So do you want me to pick it up from there?
Please.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm going to speak now a little bit about social soil building and also working on our inner soils. And after that, we'll have a break, have a chance to see how all this strikes us. So what I want to say first off is that that even though we present these soils side by side, and you saw the slide doing that, actually they're nested within one another. That's the reality of them. We are nested within the entire earth. And so caring for our earth is almost inseparable from caring for each other. We're all part of the earth. The earth is part of us. And nested within that earth, Mother Earth that holds us, is how we care for one another. So nurturing our relationships with one another, as well as with the soil, plants, animals in our care. Nurturing relationships is another way of saying building social soil. And so the question becomes, how do we build social soil? And what we came to after reflecting on it is that building trust is an essential factor in building social soils. Trusting one another it's sort of like the metaphor would be trust is like compost. Compost makes heavier soil lighter. It gives stability and depth to light soils. It balances trust. The cultivation of trust leavens relationships and also gives relationships depth when we trust each other. It opens up so many doors to put potential seeds in the ground to be fertile. So trust is colloidal, the way compost is. Compost, when it is applied, has this magical effect that the result is stable humus, and the compost, through the work of the creatures that live in the soil, becomes stable humus, and trust creates the stable humus of a relationship, if you want, and you can build from there. So, what are the skills we need for growing social soil? What are the skills we need to build trust? So, one of the first thing, and maybe the most important thing, and we'll speak about this shortly, is the ability to listen to someone else or to others deeply. And that involves 4 different types of listening, and Steffen will speak about that momentarily. It also involves being able to be personal, I would say empathic, really, and yet at the same time, be objective, be able to discern the reality of a situation and yet not be cold about it, be warm and at the same time objective. Building trust requires being interested in someone else and his, her, or their needs. And it means working toward being inclusive and collaborative in our forms and structures, our conversations, how we work together. It requires transparency and openness. I have found that transparency works wonders. People are very patient, even when I've been, let's say, in the middle of a process in my various projects, and it's becoming a little bit opaque because I can't give a definitive next step. If I just write to people or talk to them and say, I'm in the middle of this is where I am right now. We're not at a place where we can find a solution. People have incredible patience if they know if they're included in the process. It also requires, building trust requires the existence of accountability. So when I speak about Roland Grosser, which is what I'm thinking about as I'm speaking, I'm the director of that project. The people who work around me need to know that I'm accountable for the things I'm doing and saying, and that they are not only accountable to me, I'm accountable to them. Respect for the freedom of each person. This is very difficult because when we disagree, we automatically it starts to become an area of debate, and we want our point of view to be to be the one that's accepted. We try to convince each other, and often that I think there is a different way of speaking that we will talk about also, which respects the freedom of thought and feeling of each individual. This requires flexibility, and it also requires that there's trust that a solution can be found when there is conflict. Very difficult, but very necessary to have full belief in that. And then finally, my own feeling is that humor goes a long way in helping us with all the skills that need to be built. So that's quite a list. And we can say yes, ideally and conceptually. But the question is, do we know how to practice these ability to listen deeply, to be personal but objective, to be interested, to think, oh yes, this is good, I agree. That's fine. We may think it conceptually, but in reality, in everyday life, we come against situations where I feel like I fail all the time at respecting the freedom of the individual or at being flexible. I get fixed in my point of view. So we have to learn how to practice, and practice brings us to the question of growing our own inner soil. So, and that so as we are nested in the earth, within the earth, and in our social soils, we are nested deeply within ourselves. We are aware that I am here, I am a person, I am here, I'm coming out of myself to do deeds every day. But do I take the time to turn the camera, as Steffen said, on myself and look at myself and say, how am I doing? How am I, in the same way that we need to have collaborative relationships with others, I have the capacity as a human to learn how to have a collaborative relationship with myself. And that is what is involved in growing inner soil. I'm just going to speak very briefly because it's a private subject in many ways, but there are things we can do to cultivate our inner soils. And I'll start with a quote that Dag Hammarskjöld said in 1957. Steffen and I visited the United Nations, and in the United Nations, there's a room. It's a meditation room that was built. I think Dag Hammarskjöld had it built, I think, right, Steffen? Yeah. And in that room is a very beautiful space for people to be silent in. And this is the quote that was in the room. We all have within us a center of stillness that is surrounded by silence. So in today's world, finding a time to be silent is not easy. We're bombarded with all kinds of stimulation and social media and all of that. So if we want to cultivate our inner soil, some moments where we can just be silently with ourselves and be in touch with ourselves would be, I think, a good practice. There are many ways to meditate. I myself have a morning practice of silent prayer, and then not even prayer, going more inward, taking a verse and really living with it and having it be within me. And what I'm trying to do when I do that is I'm trying to connect myself, my everyday self, to what I call my higher self. Or one could say the part of myself where I tell me I can do better. I know I can do better. And that's me talking to myself and respecting that I'm going to make mistakes, but turning the camera, the light on to shining the light on to myself. In addition, I'm also a potter, and when I center my clay and try to bring something beautiful into existence, I cannot do it if I'm not silent and centered. If I have music, I have to be very mindful of what kind of music it is. But that's another form of practice. And then there's the question of mindfulness. We call ourselves the Institute for Mindful Agriculture. And for us, it's not only mindfulness toward ourselves, but mindfulness towards others. I'm going to read you a something called the loving kindness meditation that we worked with at a workshop recently. Here it is. What it asks first is that you think about someone you care about deeply and offer them this verse. May you be loved. May you be happy. May you thrive and flourish. May you reach your potential. May you be seen, heard, and understood. May you know that you are enough. And so we were asked to bring a person we love in mind to our minds and our hearts, and then to listen to these words. And then we were asked to bring to ourselves someone we were having a real problem with, and someone we even disliked intensely, and offer these words to them, which was quite interesting as we reflected later as a group how that struck us, how much more difficult it was. And the final part of that meditation, that verse is, or that exercise is to bring the entire world to really imagine it and bring those words of loving kindness to the world. So that is, I think, a beautiful way to practice mindfulness. The other things we can do is to be very sensitive observers of the world, discerning, empathic, but discerning, and then to reflect back what we've observed during the course of a day. So there is an exercise that I have practiced off and on, where at the end of the day, I simply go back over my day as though I were objective, personal, but objective, and just reflect on what happened, who I met, and how I was. And if I wasn't quite what I wanted to be, it's not a time to beat myself up. It's just time to observe it. And out of that, one could journal, and then make a resolve, perhaps. If you find a pattern, if I find a pattern, I keep doing that, I will try X, Y, and Z. So those are just some ways of taking this term of cultivation of inner soil and kind of working with it and bringing it out of its more conceptual nature and into practice. But yeah, so I'll stop there.
Yes, so thanks, Rachel.
Uh-huh.
Thank you very much. So we've talked quite a bit, and we thought this might be a good spot to maybe stop for just a minute or two and see if there's any reflections and questions from you all, now that we've tried to describe a little bit these three areas, these three soils, and maybe how to get into working with them a little bit. So would open it up for any kind of questions or reflections, and then we'll continue in a little while.
I'm just trying to get out of there and come back here. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel and Stefan. Are there any questions or reflections that anyone would like to share at this point about anything that's been presented so far?
Yeah, I'll just say something. This is really resonating with me very strongly. I really appreciate where you're going from this based on a lot of your life experience and on multiple levels. I really like the analogy of trust and compost. I thought that was really positive. So thanks for
Great.
everything. Looking forward to what's coming next.
Great. And Rachel, you have your hand out.
No.
Rochelle, sorry, it's Rochelle.
Oh,
Me
okay.
mispronouncing the name. Go ahead.
Hey,
Hey.
Rochelle,
Hi.
thanks so much for your perspectives, your framework, from which you run your farm operation. I run a farm here in Saskatchewan and I grow garden seeds. Been doing that for, well, my family, my dad and I have been doing that for about 40 years. Me, I'm not quite 40 yet, so maybe I haven't been doing it so long, but I've been around it for my whole life. Um, and I've been, thinking about how I want to keep running this farm going forward and with what strong principles and values are my strengths versus my dad's and the way he ran things. And I keep thinking about connections and webs and the importance of this and the way you've kind of explained your approach very much resonates with the way I want to go forward with my vision and at the farm here on the land. And I'm just kind of curious, how do people like us who are running farm operations, who want to use this kind of an approach and perspective, how do we connect and collaborate with one another across large geographical distances? Do I say, hey, let's officially somehow be connected? I want to operate in a similar fashion, although locally it's going to look manifest very differently, right? Like I know your frameworks have maybe been built on other people's kind of knowledge and insight as well. So I'm just curious as to your thoughts as to how someone here in Saskatchewan could say, you know what, this is a framework that resonates greatly with me and could be very helpful to, I don't know. Yeah, I'd appreciate your insight as to what you think in terms of any of that, I guess. Thanks.
Wow. Well, thanks for the questions, and happy to hear that some of the things we've shared are resonating. So what I would say, Rochelle, is that clearly obviously every single farm is individually different, even within Saskatchewan and even within New York State. But I believe some of the principles we've learned and that we've talked about are universally applicable as long as we're dealing with the earth and with human beings. And so I would say, I think we'd be very happy to stay connected and then discuss this in more detail if you're interested. Certainly something we would be, like I said, we consider ourselves a learning community, and I don't ever like the word. In fact, I don't even like the word teaching so much anymore. It's really co-learning. We're all learning together. We're all on a journey together. So if you feel there's something there that we could support you in some way as you develop the farm, let's just follow up. We know how to get in touch, and now I don't necessarily always like this kind of technology, but in this particular case, it's helpful. So I'm very happy to follow this up later and learn a little more in detail what your questions would be, and then see if we can even be helpful in the first place.
Thanks.
I would just add to that the framework is on our website. It's open source. So feel free to do whatever you want with it. But also we'd be happy to either help you in shaping your own social soil on your farm or beyond. And yeah, I agree with Stefan. Always up for a visit to Canada.
Oh,
Love.
yeah. Well, now you're going way out there, Rachel. Clearly that.
Steady on.
And I'll just put the name of my farm operation currently is Prairie Garden Seeds on our website there if you wanted to take a look. That's what we do.
Yeah, and I was just going to say also, for all of us, like the learning community also means, let's, in fact, I think that's a sort of an interesting aspect of moving our world forward is let's all feel free and be invited to share our learnings with each other, right? Because I'm sure you've all on this call learned things that I have not learned yet. And rather than making too many mistakes, let's really, that's, I think, the other real advantage of a network, of a living network. So goes all ways. So thank you for those questions.
Any other questions or reflections before we continue? No? All right. Thank you. I'll save mine till the end.
Okay. We are going to try to continue then.
So as we continue, you'll see we'll go more now into, we've talked about these three soils, and now we're talking a little bit more about how can we look at a bioregion, a region, a system, and try to work on some projects. So that's kind of where we're moving towards now. And I think Rachel, you have a little more to share, and then we'll switch back.
Yes. Yeah.
Since you're a potter, you sit a lot on a lot of stools. So that's
I'm a potter, and that's the potter's stool.
That's right.
So let me just see where I'm at here. Okay. So the next question is, how can we make use of these soils, these skills, this work that we're doing in terms of systems change? And what is systems change anyway? And so here's a slide called From Inner Transformation to Social Innovation. How does the inner affect our groups, our communities, the systems we live in? And this is a model that is called the three-legged stool. It comes from Peter Senge, who was also part of MIT and a professor there, and was maybe the originator, even before Otto, of applying some radical models to systems change. And for him, one key is to develop core leadership capacities in individuals within any community or system that's being studied or worked with. So the first leg of any transformation involves knowing that you have an aspiration, a purpose, a vision, being able to clearly characterize it, but also reach for it. We live in a current reality every day, and we also have aspirations, and there's a tension between those two. But the tension can be a source of not just stress, it can actually be a motivator if we don't let ourselves get stressed out. If we learn to take that tension and let it motivate us, give us intentionality, goal, that's really important. That's maybe what we would call the vertical axis. But we can't do it alone. we have to be able to work with others when we want when we want to open up the possibility for change. That requires conversation. And the quality of the conversation will always determine the quality of the outcome and the solutions that are found. And so learning how to bring that kind of conversation to its highest potential is the second leg of the stool. And the third leg is what we were talking about before, being a good, sensitive observer of the current state and the future potential of the community or system that you are working to transform. Turning the spotlight on the system itself, going to the most marginalized people within a community or group, asking them, enfolding them, bringing them in so that you hear all points of view. That is part of that transformative possibility. And we are going to talk about a particular project that we just started and are working with, where we tried to do just that. And if we can hold our communities and systems that we call systems and feel them more as living presence, then we would know that it all goes back to the land. It always goes back to the land. I said to Steffen, well, a food system. I said to him earlier today, what about the man driving the truck down to the green market or whatever it is? Is that the land? And he said, yes, because it all comes back to the truck and the food and the person being reliant on the land. So that's kind of a way of looking at how you take your inner skills that you're developing and how we begin to look at look at the whole that we're and the highest potential of the whole that we're trying to transform. Okay.
So Rachel, skip the next slide and go to the listening slide, please. Skip this one. Yeah. So now, before we get into the two projects that we want to really have enough time to describe and then have questions about, I want to just spend some time though on what on the leg on the stool just was one of the legs was reflective conversation. And thinking back when I first encountered this work, this was another real wake-up call for me when I started to be confronted with the fact that listening is actually a real activity. It requires real effort. And I had never recognized that. In fact, nobody's ever taught me in my life and career about listening. And so to really think about it and to then try to practice it, you could say practice, practice, practice is kind of my motto that I'm trying to sort of remember every single day. But so listening, and the two slides that I'm going to briefly discuss now is there's four types of listening and four types of speaking that are related, obviously. And I want to just say right up front that none of them are bad or good. They're just different. And it's good to, and what I appreciate about this sort of description is that it allows you to sort of maybe learn and practice engaging in the different ways. And like Rachel said, the only difference is that if you want to expect a certain result out of a conversation, which as you think about your life and work, a lot of time is interacting with others. So communication is maybe one of the maybe most important keys. This can become helpful. And again, in one of Sharma's books, he actually says And if you work on a farm, you all know, and maybe not even on a farm, if you, just know it, you know what an acetylene torch is. A torch that can create a flame with very, very high temperatures that can melt steel or soften steel. And Sharma says these deeper qualities of listening can have a similar profound effect on a social interaction. And I would say, while I'm still myself a baby in trying to learn this, the little bit that I've practiced, I think this is quite true. This is a pretty radical way of sort of thinking about interacting with others. So that's why we maybe spend some time on there. And so you can see here these four types of listening. The listening number one is the one that I think we all kind of just do because we have ears. And mostly what happens though is we're kind of just listening to things that we already know. We don't even pay attention. It just goes in and just somehow goes there. But then if I, pay a little more attention and exert a little bit of effort, I can maybe open my mind, get rid of some of my preconceived notions and judgment, and actually start listening to a person that has a different opinion and listen to the differences and not just sort of ignore them, but listen to particularly those differences. And that can really help me to open my mind and expand my horizon. Then number three is I can go a step further and not only open my mind, I can actually try to really not only hear what somebody's saying, but really try to understand and get a sense of what they really mean. So almost try to put myself in the other person's shoes and really try to experience where they're coming from and what they're saying and how they're saying it. So almost listen behind the words, what's called here empathic listening. And that can have a profound effect that it can really open my heart space and I can take things in that I before would have missed. And then there's another other step you can do, and that is what's called here generative listening, and that is really an interesting an interesting state in that you kind of actually certainly lost the focus of yourself. You've even transcended this empathic stage where you sort of are in with the other person or in the group that you're in, but you kind of just are in the present moment and you just kind of listen to whatever is transpiring in that moment and often things can come in that then get expressed through speaking. And maybe you can go to the next slide that is sort of the other side of that coin. And again, you can kind of see here the corresponding four types of talking to each other. Again, we pretty good at talking nice. I tell you what I think you want to hear. Often I tell the story that since I'm from Germany and Germans are pretty reserved culture, when I first came to this country and everybody that I met on the streets asked me how am I doing, I kind of initially was shocked. What the heck, they're talking to me, and I kind of was a little intimidating for a while. But then I was recognizing, this is not a bad way because it can open a conversation. It often doesn't, but it's a way of engaging with somebody. And but if it stays at that phase, obviously, if I ask that question to somebody, most likely I'm not really that interested in how they're doing, and more likely than not, they're not going to tell me how they're exactly doing anyways, if it's just this question. But it can open the conversation to go a little deeper, and then again we can go through the stage of a debate where I'm telling you my point of view and you're telling me your point of view, and that's we kind of just debating back and forth, which kind of gets stuck at a certain point. But I can go further and then go to this more like true dialogue where I can kind of like not defend my own viewpoint, but really try to inquire into the other person's viewpoint, and maybe then um, get to the stage where this generative listening can lead to a speaking out of the present moment. And what I was saying before is I've been in meetings with other people where we've really hammered, really looked at a problem. I mean, it could be on the farm, could be we're facing a challenge, or we need to figure out how to make a decision in terms of a capital investment. And everybody brings their viewpoint to the table. you talk about it, you weigh the pluses and the minuses, and then often what can happen is, and often a moment of silence can be magic there, and maybe that's where this generative listening has a chance to come in, and then somebody in the group will say something that almost like a miracle points to a way forward, and that's really this speaking out of this generative flow level 4. So all I want to say is that this is an interesting for me in, there's many practice opportunities for me every single day, and I fail off more often than not. But just for me to be aware of this possibility can really open up conversations. And then I guess what we want to lead into now is, like Rachel already alluded to, when we did these projects, this is obviously in any work situation, in any personal relationship, these can be quite helpful. And I have to admit, and then maybe Rachel is gonna, not like maybe when I came back from this presencing workshop, which was like 15 years ago, this was really the biggest thing that I shared right away with her because she wasn't there, that I've kind of really felt bad that for the majority of our relationship, I did not know this. And as a result, I think she suffered more than I, but I'm hoping that I've been practicing a little bit and maybe
Yeah.
better. Okay, I get a semi thumbs up, so that's pretty good.
No, 2 thumbs up.
Okay, well, that's very generous. And Rachel, I think what we should do is we should go straight into the projects and then we'll have a discussion afterwards.
I was thinking the same thing. Okay.
Great.
All right.
So
So
what we're going to do now is, so we've talked a little bit about how this institute came about, how we're trying to sort of structure our work and frame it, and now currently we are involved with two main projects. One is a bioregional effort around agriculture and food in the Hudson Valley where we live and have worked, and this rolling grocer. So we're going to describe some of that to you, and then we open it up for discussion.
yeah. Yeah, I think we had planned for another break, but I think that if we give you a bit more content, then we can have a good long time for Q&A, and you'll have more content to work with. So we'll be done in the next 20 minutes, and that will still leave us plenty of time for discussion. So here are two of our projects where we have tried to practice some of what we're talking about as the Institute for Mindful Agriculture. The first one is we did something called a sensing journey through the Hudson Valley, and you see in front of you a very beautiful photograph of the river, the Hudson River. In our region, the Hudson River extends from the Adirondacks all the way down to New York City. It's a magnificent river, and our whole bioregion is contained around this river has been formed by the river, really. So a lot of the farms, whether they're hill farms or on the flatter areas, whether they're fruit or vegetables or grazing lands, it's really the geography of the river influences, but of course, the soil types and the kind of agriculture that's done. So we're going to speak about that project. And then the second photograph you see is of a really teeny tiny store in Hudson, New York, which is the capital city, very small, 6,000 people of our county, which is Columbia County. And it is a food access project, but with a twist. And it comes out again of our wanting to make relationships that cut across income lines, actually. So I think I'm gonna, okay, a sensing journey through the Hudson Valley is first up. I've spoken a bit about our bioregion, and what we decided to do was to visit about 20 farms and food initiatives from the upper part of the Hudson River, which you see, I think if you take a look and you see what's called Glen Falls up there. And above, if you even go above, you go to, at the very top of that map is, I can barely see it, is, there it is, Henderson Lake. That's the source of the Hudson River. Steffen and I visited it. And so, and we got a feeling for the length of the river, and you see that it empties out in New York City to the Atlantic Ocean. And what we decided to do was take a representative group. I mean, it's a small bubble that we're in, but we did take some various farms and food initiatives, and we went on a journey to speak with the different folks who were working these initiatives, and we wanted to sense what are they doing in terms of the being part of the food system, and how are they doing it. So I'll just go through them all very quickly. Stonehouse Farm, way at the top on the right, you see, was the first place we visited. That is, how many acres is that, Steffen?
Rich, I think it's going to take too long if you do that.
No, I'll just go quick.
Okay, well, that's a couple of thousand acres.
Couple of thousand acres of grain, mostly. Dutch Hollow Farm is a 1,000-acre, 1,000-cow dairy. Elizabeth Frischkopf gave us a history, an indigenous history of the Hudson area. We visited a pasta making plant, a farm that does outreach into food access work, and then a couple of orchards, and some nonprofits, and one initiative in New York City that's working particularly with people of Latin origin and who are suffering right now under the immigration laws, and providing support for them and food for them. Brooklyn Grange, which is a rooftop garden and a very large food co-op in Brooklyn. Then we visited some nonprofits that work with food system work. And I'm just going through quickly now. Finally, we visited a place called the Crop Shop, which is trying to process food from the farmers and make products to sell all along the Hudson Valley. Then we visited a very, very interesting farm called Bread Tree Farms, which is planting thousands and thousands of chestnut trees in eastern more. Is it? Yeah. Part of the Hudson River region, and trying to grow interest in nut trees. So there, I shortened it up. And then is a quick picture of the team. One member is missing. She's taking the pictures. She's our colleague, Ursula. and a person who's been working with systems work for 30 or 40 years. When we visited folks, we asked the following questions. What personal experience or decision brought you into your current role? Describe your enterprise. What are you most excited about? What issues or challenges are you confronted with? What are the major changes in agriculture that you have observed over the time you've been working in the food system? And what the rest was our notes. So we wanted to make sure we got a tour. We also had this phrase called broccoli, meaning we didn't want it to go too long. It's like this stuff that is someone describing their work, but we wanted to make sure we could dig in deeper, see the polarities in what people were bringing forward, and create some kind of feedback loop. And then we wanted to collect quotes from people. So that's kind of what we started out with. And these were guidelines, they were conversation starters. But depending on the quality of how we were listening, we received very individual and sort of deep answers, depending on the day and how we were doing, from the people we spoke with. All right.
So yes, so we know that this took place over the course of a week, and then when we're done, we started really reflecting on our visits, reflecting on the impressions, on the sense impressions, and also what we sensed sort of was the vibe of each visit. And then we looked at these quotes, which is sort of one of the centerpieces. And again, it's as we'll see later, it's also the same model, turning the camera around. So we wanted to basically find a way to reflect back to the community that we'd visited, reflect back a picture of themselves via their authentic quotes. And as we were going over the data and the quotes, we kind of noticed the pattern, and we noticed that we could organize a lot of the most pithy quotes along those two axes here. And the title of these two axes, the vertical one we call is sort of a description of the quality of the human-earth connection. And the horizontal axis we named the quality of social relationships between you and me. And then the other interesting thing was in pretty much each interview, each conversation we had, clearly, as you can all suspect, everybody was facing some severe challenges in their current reality, be that the pasta factory or be that Mick Stecker was working with a mostly Mexican population in the middle of New York City. You name it. Everybody had current reality issues, challenges they were facing and dealing with as best they could. But then also it was really interesting that just about everybody in some really inspiring language also had aspirations, goals that they talked about. So we arranged the quotes along those two axes, and then had them expressed as a current reality and as future aspirations. And we'll just give you the next slide. Will give you some flavor of that. I don't think I'm going to read them all, but maybe
Well, you can. We have
gonna read.
time.
No, well, no, at 3:30 we're done. And so we you can see here though, I just want to do some of the really the ones that really stuck with me. And since this is recorded and shared, you can really dig into a little more. But for example, when one of the people told us our intention for farming is we are trying to be good ancestors, boy, that struck home. I'd never really expressed that myself, certainly, and that really was such a beautiful way of thinking about one's work in a whole different context. Or, we're trying to form bioregional thinking towards landscape scale design. And then the vertical axis, current reality. Um, Family-owned farm business have challenges. Many retiring farmers don't have a succession plan. Young farmers don't have land and housing, but we all need to feed a lot of people. Or when I get a mindset of scarcity, which is closed, it's preventing collaboration. So that those are just a couple of really, I think, that's the field, so to speak. That's the Hudson Valley speaking about itself. And then on the other one, the axis of the social axis, so to speak. How about the guiding light we use? What is it as a child or a single mom to have access to good food? How about that, making that the premise of our work? Or a healthy food system is one where everyone feels like a contributor. And that the current reality, and why is everyone driving the same route in their own crappy van? So, um, so you can kind of see this was interesting. And then Rachel, maybe just move it on one slide. And so then this happened in June, end of June, and then we had some time to sort of get our minds around all the data we collected. And then just a couple of weeks ago, we organized an event where we invited everybody we visited back together for sort of a feedback. And you can see some pictures of that event that happened at a place in the Hudson Valley. And basically the idea was, and what we did is we presented our findings along those two axes, and then let the community hear itself. And then and so that's where this project stands. And so now the next step is we are writing up a report and we'll share that with everybody. And then and in my mind, these are all the visits to the farms, the staying in touch in between, the calling people back together, reaching out with a report. These are all, in my mind, steps of cultivating and building some social soil in this group. And then I guess we'll have to keep you posted on what the next step is. I think one thing we know already is we need to get the voice of what I call the non-farming eaters into the conversation. Obviously, everybody in this room is an eater, but their primary hat is either farmer or nonprofit talking about farming or making pasta. So we want to find some people who are just individuals who live on this planet but don't farm but eat, obviously. And we really want to find a way to get them heard and get that into the process as well, because clearly that's where a lot of leverage is, because most of us are non-farming eaters that are living on this planet right now. So that's where that project currently stands. And now I'll turn it back over to Rachel to give you a little insight into the Rolling Grocer.
And my apologies, everyone. I thought we were going till 4, so I'm going to make this really quick so that we have time for questions. So the Rolling Grocer is a nonprofit grocery store that was founded in 2018, and its mission is to provide fair food. We believed very strongly, we believe that high quality, organic, natural, local food is very important for everyone. And we wanted it to be available to everyone. So in order to do that, we opened the storefront in Hudson, which, as I mentioned, is the capital of our county, Columbia County, where it's in gentrification right now. So it has some very wealthy people coming up from New York City who live there. There are people of many different backgrounds who live in town, and families who are struggling with both parents working, many people on SNAP and other benefits. And we wanted to make the food available to everyone. Just a few pictures of our store, very small retail area, but it has groceries, produce, meats and poultries, frozen food. It's full, dairy. It's a full-on store. And the key and here are we have a home delivery program, and we buy as much as we can from local farmers. It's just a picture of who we are. Key to our work is the development of this chart. We have 3 different tiers. So every item, the peppers you saw, the the chicken that's in the freezer, whatever, the groceries, the cereal, whatever, is each item has 3 different prices. People select based on how many people in their family and their annual or hourly income, whether they are a blue, orange, or green shopper. And the prices there are 3 different prices. So if you're a blue customer, you can shop at the lowest price, orange at a middle price, and the green customer is able to purchase at what the actual retail cost for natural food is. It's become, I would say, a beloved part of Hudson because it's the only grocery store in Hudson. So there are strips, but if you can't drive, you can't enter one of those, malls if you want. And a lot of our folk in town find it difficult, and some don't have cars. So that's just a little bit of a view of the rolling grocer. And I guess we can come back now to your questions if you have
Yeah, just
any.
one last comment on the rolling grocer, because talking I can sort of talking again about myself and my own bubble. So for many years, I mean, having farmed at Hawthorne Valley, and there's products that the farm produces, vegetables, meat, bread, yogurt. I never felt embarrassed about the prices that those products went for, because I knew what went into them and I believed in their quality. But I had never thought about that actually eliminated probably 95% of humans from really realistically being able to buy them. And that is sort of a question that is as part of our food system right now that is can't stand. And so the rolling grocer in some ways is a very tiny way of at least pointing the light onto that problem and finding a way to maybe, raise some awareness around it. For me, it was a real awakening moment to sort of think, well, that's great that I farm and it's wonderful, but what about all these people that can't really afford this food? So anyways, I just wanted to add that, because for me that was a real, and it continues to be a wonderful initiative to sort of keep raising this, or keep moving this question and this paradox around. All right, now I'm done.
Thank you both, Stefan and Rachel, for your presentation and sharing the work of the Institute of Mindful Agriculture and your 2 projects. And now we have about 10 minutes left, so just wanted to open it up to questions and reflections. So yeah, if there is any out there, don't be shy.
I've got one which is about the rolling grocer. I really like that concept, but so as a business model, how do you
Yeah,
can stay afloat doing that?
yeah, I can tell you quickly. It's a nonprofit. We had $1,400,000 of sales last year in this tiny little spot, less than 800 square feet of retail area. But I do have to raise funds each year because 2 of the 3 tiers, as an entrepreneur running a natural food store, you would mark up your food between 35 and 40% if you're small. And it's organic food. You have to keep your business afloat. And in the blue tier, I give a 30% reduction. So we're always losing money. So we are combined earned income and fundraise. We fundraise. And what I did was we found 10 donors who really believe in the project, like strongly believe in it. And so I asked them, and we are blessed in that there's wealth that we can draw on in the Hudson Valley, right? People who moved from New York City up. So I asked for them to close the gap. And those 10 donors continually close the gap. And they're pretty committed. And so no one is asked for really more than $25,000, but I also have a foundation that gives quite a bit more. So, and that's been pretty solid. It's the fourth year people return and, close the gap.
I keep trying to tell Rachel she shouldn't say that the store's losing money. It's money that's invested in the community building, really.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Sure, thank you. Any other questions or reflections?
I would just say, anyone interested in the Rolling Grocer, I can send you, it's also quite open source. I can send you a ton of information if it's a project you're interested in.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate like the openness to share, I think is, that one quote that, around the scarcity getting in the way of collaboration. And I think that it's really hard to to sort of move or shift into a mindset of abundance when that's not how you're feeling, right? And sometimes there's, a bit of a leap of faith that needs to happen. But to have folks who are running successful projects, who are willing to share their knowledge and experiences is appreciated for sure, because you never know, right?
Well, I feel about the Rolling Grocer that it is an idea whose time has actually come. And the new mayor in New York City is already talking about public grocery stores. I don't know what he means by that. I would like to find that out. But from my point of view, there could be a Rolling Grocer in every town where gentrification's going on across the country, and we would be able to raise a lot more money if we were collaborating. So I'm all for it.
No, that's wonderful. I'll open it up just to thank you from Jessica in the chat. Well, I think I'll close it out for the day, just with a huge thank you and expression of gratitude for you being here today and sharing. And these formats aren't always necessarily, conducive to as much collaboration or connection as we would like, but for me, it was a really great sort of download of information with some practical tools, right? Especially around the inner soil cultivation, and also which I think is connected to the listening and conversation, right? I think that increasingly we live in a world where, and I include myself in that, where we're inundated with so much information. I feel like I only have enough bandwidth to listen to stuff that I at least care a little bit about, right? And find myself just blocking out lots of things. And although I think it's a survival mechanism, I don't necessarily think it's how you build community and collaboration, because it's easy to like the people who are like you. It's, and to hang out with them, it's more challenging to embrace the diversity that we need to be able to embrace to transform the world that we're living in, and food is central to that transformation. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there. Yeah, so thank you again for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, for sure.
Have a great reflective time of the seasons now for most of us, hopefully. And good luck with the work, and best for next year.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.